Welcome to the Virtual College Exploration Program for all Illinois students, sponsored by the Illinois Association for College Admissions Counseling and StriveScan. Thank you for joining us today. A few housekeeping announcements before we get started. You can use the Q&A button on your screen to type your questions to our presenters at any time. Your camera and microphone are off, so the panelists cannot see or hear you. This is just one of many different sessions happening, so be sure to check out a full schedule at IACAC.org. This presentation is being recorded and will be available within about a week at the same website, IACAC.org. Now, I'd like to turn it over to our presenters.
Thanks for the introduction, Katie. Hello, everyone. Thank you very much. I'm really excited to be presenting to you today, so just bear with me just one moment whilst I share my screen. Okay, so wonderful. So thank you so much for joining us today. So it will be me and my colleague Felicia speaking to you today, and we're really delighted to be talking to all of you. We're both based in London at the moment, so a massive hello from London, England. It's evening on our end here, so I know that you're just getting into the afternoon over there. So just a little bit about me, and then I'll let Felicia introduce herself. My name is Annabelle. I work as the Special Projects Manager for the Americas Recruitment Region at the University of East London. And I've been working with American students for 7 years in total, encouraging them to come over the pond and pursue their degree in London, but also in Dublin and in Spain. So I'm a real advocate of the study abroad, benefits of studying abroad and pursuing your international education. And I'll pass over to Felicia to introduce herself.
Wonderful. Hello. Sorry for all the camera issues. I seem to have the good old kind of working from home camera falling over, so apologies for that. But as Annabelle mentioned, my name is Felicia Werner. I'm the Senior Regional Manager for the Americas Recruitment. As you can probably tell by my very non-British accent, I am originally from Canada. I personally have also kind of experienced the transition of taking the leap of faith, shall we call it, overseas, and ended up loving it. So even for any students who do have any questions, I'm more than happy to kind of speak on my experience as well. We know it can be daunting, but it's also a really exciting opportunity. So I'll let Annabelle take it away. I will be kind of moderating some of the questions as they come in. So please, any questions, feel free to shoot them through, because this session is for you guys.
Thanks very much, Felicia. Wonderful. So I'll get the ball rolling on this presentation. So I wanted to start off with this wonderful slide of London. So it's the University of East London. We are based in London. So we have 3 campuses across the London area. We are a university that's only based in London. So we don't have any campuses abroad, but we do have campuses based in various areas of the East London area, which is a really cool, vibrant area. And it's known as one of our up and coming areas. So a really, really fun place to be. Now, we've got these 2 gorgeous pictures. One on the left is well-known Big Ben, and then we've got the Shard at sunset. And there's this really famous quote by Samuel Johnson, which mentions, when a man is tired of London, he is tired of life. And we truly believe that is the case, because London is one of those cities that's always diversifying. There's always something new cropping up. You can never get bored of it, and you can never accomplish everything on the never-ending list of bucket list things to do in London. So it's one of those cities that is just so much fun to be a part of. So I'll go into a bit more about the University of East London. So the University of East London started off as something called a polytechnic college in the 1890s. But in 1992, it became part of the modern universities that cropped up around the UK, which has been really great for us because it means that we were able to tailor the university facilities and give it a very fresh, modern approach for our students. And it also meant that we were able to include a lot of really cool courses from the get-go to really, roll with the times as new professions came in. In terms of a student population, we're around 17,000 students, but that also includes distance learning students. So that is our total student population. In terms of international students, you're looking at around 20% of them being international students. So we have international students from all over the world. So we're talking about the Middle East, Americas, South America, Australia, all over the world. And approximately each year, we have about 100 US students joining us physically on campus, which is really great and definitely something that our UK students love because they absolutely love the US students joining. It's become a thing that now we have a US society at the University of East London so that you can join together and celebrate Thanksgiving together and do really fun things together that, as Americans, you find special. And the UK students love getting involved in that. In terms of the schools and the programs we offer, we have 6 schools across the University of East London, and I'll go into that in a bit more depth as the presentation progresses. So I wanted to add this photo of our campus because I think it's really good to get a sense of what the campus looks like. So we have 3 campuses, but this is our largest campus and it's called the Docklands campus. And it is right by the River Thames. So you'll see the River Thames to the right of the photo. In terms of a campus, it is a small campus, but it does have everything that you need on it. So if you look in the middle, you'll see the buildings, and that's where all of our classes are held. And then you'll notice by the water, there are 2 yellow buildings, and you can't see it throughout the photo, but those buildings, which are almost kind of like shaped in a round way, they continue further up the photo and they line the River Thames. And that is our student accommodation. So I'm going to flick back to this slide. You'll notice there's a photo at the bottom with the buildings and the sunset of the water. And that is our accommodation. So it's a really great place to live because you've got this gorgeous riverfront view and you've got the financial district across the water and you've got a community right on your doorstep. So it's a really great place to live. In total, the campus from one end to the other end, you could probably walk it in about 5 to 10 minutes, depending on how quick you walk. And further on in the photo is our sports dock. And that is, that holds our gym, that holds our basketball facilities. And I'll go into that in a bit more depth later. Now, you'll notice in this photo that there is a circle in the middle with a train going through. That is our transport stop that directly connects to the University of East London, which is really fantastic because one thing we're really passionate about is that although we give you as much as we can in the university, we really truly believe that London is an extension of the campus. So if there's something that we don't offer on campus, you'll find it in the London area, and you truly will. Any sport, any interest, any hobby, any type of food, you'll find in the London area. So we really love it that we have the transport system right outside the doorstep of the campus, which means that you can get back and forth and travel all around the London area with such ease. I'll go into more of the travel later, but I thought that was important to note. Right, so you might be saying, well, this all sounds really great. So what is the process like? So we've done a little cross comparison between the University of East London and the USA. So in terms of an application fee, you can apply 3 ways: via the Common App, via our website, or via something called UCAS. And UCAS is the UK equivalent of Common App. But we only recommend you apply via UCAS if you plan to apply to mainly only British schools, or if you plan to apply to an array of UK universities. Otherwise, you can concentrate on the Common App or applying directly. It's a completely free application, and applications are currently open on the Common App. So if that's something that interests you, please feel free to submit an application. It is completely free. In terms of an application decision and deadline, we do something called rolling admissions for international students. So you'll receive a decision within 2 to 4 weeks. And in terms of a deadline to submit, we have a deadline of end of July, which is great from the perspective that students who might have not discovered us earlier might decide to apply later, or if you've received all your acceptances from universities and you're thinking, I'm not 100% sure, you can always apply to us later on in the process. With that said, even though we do a deadline for the end of July, we highly encourage you, if we're already on your radar, to apply to us earlier rather than later. This ensures that you might get accepted to maybe one of our more popular programs. And it also means that we can really connect with you throughout your application journey and make sure that all of your questions are answered. Now, I know some of you here might be familiar with the UK education, but I know some of you also might not be. So one of the main distinctive factors about English education, English higher education compared to US higher education, is the amount of years it takes to complete it. So in England, to complete your degree, it generally takes only 3 years. And the reason why it takes 3 years is because we don't include any general education. So to give you an example, let's say that you plan to take a degree in psychology. You would only study psychology and anything related to psychology. You wouldn't take any maths or any English or anything unrelated to psychology, which is absolutely great for the student who wants to hit the ground running and wants to complete their degree quicker. It's not as favorable for the student who is looking to peruse, likes general education, wants to figure out on the way. So the English system is very much geared towards really specializing in on one particular subject and hitting the ground running in that way. Now, tuition for your first year will be approximately $17,000. This will vary slightly according to the exchange rate, but it will be around that amount. Plus, you'll get also free textbooks, which is really great in comparison to a lot of US schools where you might have a really hefty cost to pay for all of your books. Now, what we offer is an electronic portal where you can just go in, access your books. If we don't have a book you need on an electronic portal, you can always request it via the library completely for free. And because our degree is 3 years, your tuition for the entire degree is in total around $51,000. So entry requirements. What we ask for is a 3.0 GPA, and you need only one of the following: a 1070 on the SAT, a 23 on the ACT, or 3 AP scores of 3 and above. We also use something called the sliding scale. So for instance, let's say you've got a great GPA score, but you might have struggled with the tests. That's okay, as long as they even out, we'd be happy to take your scores. Something else to bear in mind is if you apply to certain programs, you might have to add an extra supplemental something for your application. So for instance, that could be an interview. If you are applying to something like social work or education, it might be an e-audition if you're applying to something like performing arts or dance, or it might be a portfolio, let's say if you're applying to something like photography or architecture. Now, we have 6 schools in total, as I mentioned before, and this spreads across 2 slides. So we have the School of Architecture, Computing and Engineering, which houses our architecture programs, engineering programs, computer science programs. Then we have the School of Art and Creative Industries, which generally looks after anything art-based, especially to do with performing arts, also journalism as well. And we have several strands of journalism if that's something that interests you. We offer fashion journalism, sports journalism, music journalism, and then journalism on its own. So that's something exciting as well. Then we have the School of Business and Law, which is everything to do with business, accounting, events, hospitality and tourism, and marketing. The remaining 3 schools, we have the School of Education, which is everything education-based or humanities-related. So we're looking at politics, international development. We also have social work in there. And then we have the School of Health, Sport and Bioscience, which looks after anything biomedical, public health, sports and exercise science. And finally, we have the School of Psychology, which is everything psychology related. Our School of Psychology is world-renowned simply because in 2014, our postgraduate research study tied first with Oxford and Cambridge. So you can understand the caliber of our School of Psychology. It's very good, it's very research heavy, and they're coming up with some really cool new findings. Now, I always enjoy presenting this slide because students tend to get really excited about what I have to say. So in the US, you'll be familiar with the accommodation. It's generally dorm related, you live with someone else. But in the UK, that isn't a thing. In England, higher education, we give you your own room, which is really exciting, I know, for you US students, because the idea of having your own space throughout your higher education is an exciting one. But we kind of go a step further than a lot of other universities. We will give you your own private bathroom and shower room. So if you look at the left-hand photo, you'll see what we give you at the University of East London. So you get a bed, you get a desk area, not shown in the photo, you'll get your own closet, and you'll also get a small bathroom and shower room. So it has a toilet, a basin, and then a little shower room. You will share a kitchen between 3 to 5 students. So this isn't connected necessarily to your room. You'll have to sometimes walk down the hall to get there, but you'll have access to a kitchen basically right outside your room, and you'll share between 3 to 5 students. Now, you'll get your room from end of September to around the end of June. So you'll get it for around 9 months of the year, because most of our international students tend to go home over the summer. If you plan to stay for the summer months, some students choose to stay over the summer months for a job or for an internship. You can look at paying extra to stay in halls, or you can choose to live outside of UEL accommodation. But for the 9 months, you're looking at around $7,500 per year. This is not including meal plans, but meal plans are not compulsory because in general, the UK students don't opt for meal plans. And therefore, it's really up to you if you want to cook and go down that route, or whether you want to opt for your meal plans. At any point, if I mention anything that interests you, do feel free to pop a question in. We'll be more than happy to answer it at the end. So in terms of sports, in 2012, London hosted the Olympics, which was an incredible time for London. And we were so lucky at the University of East London because we hosted the Team USA basketball team. So this photo in the background is the Team USA basketball team in 2012 on our campus, which has really been amazing for the University of East London. It's created a sports legacy, and it's really allowed us to channel sports and really utilize that legacy that the 2012 Olympics left for us. So we're consistently ranked in the top 3 in London for sports. Now, if you're tuning in and you're thinking, ooh, I like competitive sports, I really love sports, we do offer sports scholarships. So across athletics, basketball, soccer, tennis, volleyball, but particularly for the sports of basketball, soccer, and volleyball. So if that's something that interests you, feel free to pop a question in. We'll also share our email at the end so that you can always email us as well. Now, you might be tuning in and thinking, competitive sports really aren't my thing, and that's totally okay. Our sports doc has a gym, and it also has a basketball court, and we also have different rooms for exercise classes. So we have a spin studio, and then we have different rooms where we might host yoga, Pilates, Zumba, for those of you who like dancing. And we have different classes every day of the week at different times to to suit different schedules. So we really believe in students utilizing the sports facilities and making the most of what we offer on campus. So I mentioned travel briefly when I showed the campus photo, but I wanted to go a bit more depth into travel because there's no surprises that a lot of the students that choose to study with us love to travel. And that's a great thing. And that's something we really love you to make the most of when you're in London is to travel as much as you can. So one thing I think is worth noting, and I know I'm streaming to all students across Illinois. For those of you in Chicago, you'll be familiar with the public transport system, which are generally common in most big cities. We have the same thing, but in London, because it is such a big city, and we were one of the first cities to create such a large transport system, we have over 250 different, what we call tube stops, which are the equivalent of subway stops. So from one end of London to the other end of London, it can take up to 2 hours sometimes, which might seem a little bit daunting, but actually it's really exciting because it just means that you have such a vast array of the city to explore. Now, the public transport in London, you'll see in the picture, you've got the famous red double-decker buses, but you also have the tube. Now, the tube runs from about 6 a.m. in the morning to midnight. But if you plan to travel outside those times, then you can always get around easily on the buses. And if you choose to not use the buses, you can always take an Uber, and we have taxis in London as well. We have those very famous shaped, almost like black bubble taxis, and they're called the Hackney carriages. So public transport is a great thing in London. It also means that you don't have to fork out for the cost of a car. One also great thing about transport in London is because you'll be a student, you get a third off your transport, which makes it really budget friendly for you. And that's something also to bear in mind because it just means that it just lowers the costs all around. In London itself, we have over 5 airports in the London vicinity, which is really amazing because obviously we have Europe on our doorstep, and it doesn't take long to get to places like Paris or Greece or Italy. So what's really exciting as a student is you don't have the typical Monday to Friday schedule all the time. So you can get some great flights on a Wednesday and decide to go to somewhere in Europe and make the most of your traveling adventure. So I really wanted to mention that because traveling in Europe can be really budget friendly. The flights aren't always super expensive. And because London has so many airports, the ability to travel is really easy. Not to mention, when it's the summer or when it's Christmas, it's really easy to get back home to the US or Canada. So I just wanted to recap the benefits of studying at the University of East London. The first thing is you can complete your bachelor's degree in 3 years instead of 4 years. One of the most exciting things about the English higher education system is that you can really get on the career ladder a lot quicker than you can in the US. So to give you an example, a lot of students choose to start their degree at 18 and they complete their 3-year undergraduate, and generally master's programs in England are 1 year. So technically you can start off at 18 and graduate at 22 with a master's degree. And then you can start your way on the career ladder, which means that you can start earning money quicker, you can start expanding your career network earlier. And that, if that's something that interests you, that can only be of benefit. General education studies are not required. So if this sounds like interest to you, it's something to explore. So you never have to take English or maths again if you don't want to. Tuition fees are less than $17,500 per year. Now, I noticed I mentioned 17,000 in the previous slide, but it will approximately be around that amount. It can sometimes change depending on the exchange rate. We accept federal student loans. It's important to be aware that we accept the federal student loans part. We are unable to accept the federal grants, simply because federal grants only stay within the US, they do not transfer internationally. However, we do offer international scholarships, which are available to reduce your tuition fees. So these are given out for your first year, and they can vary anything from about $1,500 to about $5,000. So let's say if you get one of the higher scholarships, you're looking at about $5,000 coming off, and tuition for your first year only being around $12,000, which is really budget friendly. Currently, we don't have scholarships in place for the second or third year, but because you don't have to study a 4-year degree, even though we don't have scholarships for the second and third year, overall, the costs are much less than in the US. Your cost for on-campus housing with private rooms starts at around $7,000 to $7,500 per year. You get free textbooks for the entire degree via an electronic portal, and you can save thousands of dollars by not having to own or maintain a car. And if you love your time at the University of East London, we offer alumni scholarships, so you can stay on for a master's and save costs by utilizing the alumni scholarship. So if this all sounds like interest to you, you can apply to us. I know I mentioned this earlier, but just to reiterate, you can apply now via the Common App. I'm sure we have some seniors in the room here. It's completely free to apply. You'll hear back within 2 to 4 weeks. It's rolling admissions, and you have until the end of July to apply. So you really have absolutely nothing to lose, and you have everything to gain by seeing whether you can start your international education adventure. Another thing is you can apply directly via our website. Again, it's completely for free as well. And if you have been looking at other UK universities and plan to go via UCAS, that's also a route we accept, but it will come at a cost of about $40 to apply via UCAS. So I'm going to open it up to questions and answers very shortly, but I just want to finish with this slide. We have the Queen here, who we all love in the UK. And if you have any questions, I highly recommend that you jot down this email. I work as part of a wonderful team. So it's Felicia, it's my colleague Caitlin, and I. And it's a shame Caitlin couldn't be here today because she was a student from California, went through the University of East London process, and she now works with us because she loved it so much. So it's very likely that Caitlin might get back to you. So just give us an email if you have any questions, if anything springs to mind. So it's americas@uel.ac.uk. And we'd also love it if you follow our Instagram. It's Follow Me to East London. And we showcase a lot of stories of US students coming over to the University of East London. Sometimes we'll share tips of places you can visit around the London area. So we'd love for you to join us and come on the journey with us there. So I will open it to question and answer. Felicia, have we had anything come in?
I was going to say, you must have done your job really, really well because no questions so far. So you must have answered everything. No, but I have a couple of questions maybe just to kind of get things going. Obviously, we speak to a lot of international students and especially a lot of American students. One of the questions that I get a lot from students is it safe to live in London? Obviously, especially like it's maybe not as daunting if you're coming from a city like Chicago, but if you're from maybe the suburbs, it could be a little bit overwhelming to think of yourself as moving to not only a different country, but a different continent, and what is it like to live in London, and is it safe?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question, and definitely a question that a lot of parents ask as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah, no, great question. Thank you for asking. I think I can definitely talk a bit from personal experience. So I moved to London at 22 years old, and I definitely, as someone who hadn't lived in the city environment, had my questions as well about London. I think when you move into a city, it's a very common question to ask because you're in a more sheltered place where you can know everyone, you know your neighbors, and you're going into a city and all of a sudden people don't really know their neighbors. There are a lot more people, and the city's changing so frequently. So I think these are really common questions. As I've never found London to be unsafe, I think it's always a case of just using common sense. If you ever feel unsafe, or if you use common sense and you just make sure that you walk with your friends, tell people where you're going, don't walk down alleyways, you won't have any trouble. it is a really safe city. We have phenomenal public transport. So, you know, there's always people around. You're never going to find yourself alone in the city in the dark, because it's like New York. It's a city that never sleeps. So I think it's almost incredibly safe from that perspective as well. Felicia, do you have anything to add from yourself from living in London?
No, I completely can mirror everything that you've said. I think even just as even being like a female in kind of in a city that I've never really kind of explored, I found it to be um, it was never unsettling. And I think one of the things that you said is that I've never been in London, and I've been here for holy crap, 7 years now. But even in that time, I've never felt unsafe. Traveled during all times of the day, and it just makes it really easy and really comfortable. But again, obviously using that common sense aspect really helps. The other thing that you might find weird, which I did to be fair when I first moved here, is they have CCTV cameras everywhere. And at first I was like, oh, this is so strange, but in a to have so many cameras around the city. But one of the great things about it is that it makes it, that's one of the reasons that it makes it so safe. So you hardly, even like smaller things like pickpocketing and things like that, I've never, I mean, touch wood, haven't had that happen to me. And again, just kind of being mindful about it.
Wonderful. That's really good to hear.
Another question that I kind of get a lot from students are, what kind of clubs and societies do you have?
Oh, this is a great question. So I mean, we have some really cool clubs and societies. I believe we have a Harry Potter society, which I think was our most well-attended society.
Yeah.
Which I mean, it makes sense because Harry Potter is just wonderful and we love it. So we have, I think, a Harry Potter society. I mentioned we have an Americas society. So I think it's a US society. We have societies for different countries. I think we have societies for certain sports, certain hobbies. But these, and I think we have a cheerleading society as well. But I think these tend to change as and when new students come in. I think one of the other exciting things is that you can create any society you want as well. So it's not like a society has to be in place for you to create to get a part of it. If you're really interested in anything, any hobby, knitting, I don't know why that's the first one that came to me, but let's say you're excited about knitting. Yeah, you can create a society for knitting, or you can create a society for surfing, or anything. So it's really great that you can get involved and start a trend as well, and get people to love what you love.
Definitely. No, I think one of the things that I found as well is that the societies are so versatile. We have everything from, as you were saying, like cheerleading to Harry Potter, to chess clubs, to even I think we had a trampoline club at one point too. I think that's still going on. And I, just because I thought it was sports rock, and I was like, that looks like a lot of fun. But yeah, really wide ranging. Of course, all the sports clubs as well that Annabelle mentioned. And one of the things that I know Annabelle kind of touched on this as well, that we really encourage students to do is, if we don't have it on campus, you do have the opportunity to not only kind of set up your own club and society, but you also have access to London. One of the things that I kind of like to, one of the examples that I like to give is that we had a student a couple years back, and the student was in band, in like a marching band. So because American football isn't as prevalent, we do actually have an American football team, but we don't have a marching band. Because they loved it so much, they ended up finding other American students who were part of band, and they ended up starting their own kind of marching band together. And that was just from students across different universities around London to kind of put it together. So you really do have London at your doorstep, and you can really kind of access as much or as little as you want. Amazing. Another question, I think, how much time do we have left? Another question that I have is, usually we get a lot of questions from students. Do we have jobs on campus?
Ooh, lovely question. So we do offer jobs on campus. So we have a couple of coffee shops and cafes and things like that where students can get stuck in. But really, actually, the opportunities we offer on campus tend to be a little bit more substantial than that. So to give you an idea, we offer sometimes internships on campus, which you do get paid for. So it's not as simple as, it's not something that's really hospitality or hospitality related. A lot of the time we give you real practical experiences within our departments across the university. So for instance, marketing might need 3 students to help 3 days a week, or the international team might need students to help with calls 3 days a week as well. So I think that the jobs we offer students on campus will tend to be related to the departments we offer on campus, and it can really be used as part of internship experience. It can be used as part of your future career experience as well. And we also have a job center on campus, which I think is really helpful for students. And this job center will advertise all kinds of jobs from across the London area, but it will also advertise short-term roles as well as long-term roles. So there'll be one thing about London is that if we don't offer it on campus, London is such a big city and it is a city with a lot of businesses. So there is always the opportunity to get stuck into what you're interested in, which I think is really important. And having that job center there really means that you can hear about opportunities. Well, you can be one of the first to hear about opportunities.
No, I think just to kind of piggyback that as well is one of the things that we mentioned earlier on is that Caitlin, so one of the, so if you decide to kind of pursue your journey with us, which we hope you do, one of the individuals that you'll be speaking to, her name is Caitlin. She's our recruitment officer for the Americas, and she actually started off as an intern in our office when she first started her degree. So it just goes to show that kind of progression. Now she's working with us full time. But just to have that opportunity, it's a great way to make some extra cash. Obviously, we can be a lot more flexible with hours as well because we know your students, you're there to study. So we want to make sure that you complete your studies, and that is the main priority. But it's always nice to have a little bit of extra cash so you can also kind of go and enjoy the city as well. I think, Annabelle, I think we have maybe time for a quick, yeah, I'll try and squeeze in 2 more questions. One of them, maybe students wouldn't be as aware of, but one of the new things that we've embedded into all of our programs is something called mental wealth. Did you want to touch on that a little bit? Because I think this is really important, especially with kind of linking that career progression and kind of making sure that our degrees and what they're learning, the students are learning, is really applicable to the real world.
Yeah, absolutely. So mental wealth really encompasses different facets, and it's all based around making sure that you're prepared for your career. So what we were finding, and what I think a lot of other universities were finding, was that students were being taught from a very academic standpoint. They were being taught how to write essays and they were being taught how to research. But when it actually came to the job market, they weren't necessarily being taught how to be innovative, how to, tech related things. And because of that, we created this mental wealth program, which covers various different areas. And it's all about making you more prepared for the workplace so that you can really hit the ground running. And we've teamed up with places like Amazon Web Services, who are really integrated in this mental wealth structure to ensure that students understand the technologies that are up and coming. And I think it's really important to be aware that I think COVID's done a really good job of kind of telling us that, you know, society is changing and young people need to be aware that technology is here to stay, and having those technological skills is a really key part of being able to advance your career. But Felicia, is there anything that I've forgotten from that mental wealth area?
No, I think you kind of cover all the things around mental wealth. One of the nice things about it is that when students actually graduate, one of the nice pieces about is that you actually graduate with a career passport. Now, what that is, it's a great opportunity for students because obviously once you graduate, you're going to have your diploma, you're going to have your certificate and all your grades. But when you're in a job interview, of course, when someone asks you, it's like, oh, tell us about yourself, and you say, oh, well, I have great presentation skills, I'm a great writer, I can do all these things. Those are things that you can say are collaborative. Those are things that you can say, but they're hard to measure. So one of the things that the mental wealth program has actually done is it's taken companies like Microsoft, Amazon Web Services, and they've actually come in, these companies have come in and said, by completing these modules or courses, they would call them in the US, you are actually meeting all of these criteria. So when you graduate with your passport. So not only do you have kind of like your degree certificate, but you also have your career passport saying, I also have all of these skills and they've been validated by these big companies. So when you go into a job interview, you can confidently say, I have great presentation skills because I've also, and they can be certified by Amazon or by Microsoft from taking this course. So it just adds that a little bit extra more like kind of the credibility to it. So again, just kind of giving you more tools to get you ready for the real world. But we think we have one more minute, but just quickly, because I love this question. Annabelle, what is the cheapest flight you have ever caught from London?
Or I think maybe 10, 20 pounds, which is maybe something around maximum about 25 pounds, $25 or something. What about you, Felicia?
So I don't know if you've heard about it, but I got caught into, so there's an airline called Ryanair, and they have really cheap flights. So they started doing one of the massive seat sales, so they'll do one-way tickets for £5. So one time I caught a £5 ticket to Romania. So I went to Romania for the weekend for the equivalent of $7 one way. So just to kind of give you an idea that traveling is very much at your fingertips as well.
Great question.
All right. Well, thank you both, and thank you everyone for joining us today. When you close this window, there will be a link to a very quick 4-question survey. We'd appreciate any feedback you can provide. Also, this was just one of many sessions being hosted, so be sure to sign up for additional sessions at IACAC.org. In about a week, you'll be able to find the sessions recording as well as all the other sessions recording at that website, IACAC.org. Thank you all for joining us, and thank you presenters for being here today.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you so much.